CENTOX, led by global experts, offers the center teachers community insights into classroom practices and professional growth. Register for these sections and actively participate by sharing your thoughts, joining polls, asking questions, and giving feedback to help us improve them. Good evening. On behalf of CENTA, we are delighted you will join us today for the CENTA's webinar series for teachers. Today we have the session on the topic handling difficulty communications. We are excited to announce that today our facilitator is Shivani Gupta. Welcome Shivani. Ms. Shivani Gupta is an accomplished communications and language expert, teacher trainer, curricular designer, and freelance editor. With over 25 years of experience as an educator and school administrator, she transitioned from teaching chemistry to English after completing her master's in biochemistry and English. She is also a creative writing enthusiast. Ms. Gupta has designed English exam questions for all Indian level exams and in a CBSE Resource Person. She has trained educators at institutions like DAET, Mahindra House College, Air Force Schools, and Mayo Schools, and conducts national level workshop for teachers and school principals. She is also an author and poet. Welcome again to our esteemed facilitator.
Thank you so much, Atul. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dive directly into our session, Handling Difficult Communication. Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay. So, imagine that you are scuba diving and you suddenly see a shark coming towards you. Your heart will start to pound, anxiety will rise, and you will go into a panic mode. Now, further imagine that your marine biology training tells you that this shark is a reef shark which does not prey upon anything as large as you. The moment you realize that this shark is harmless, your anxiety will subside and you will become very curious and excited to study how the shark reacts. Difficult conversations are just like these sharks. As long as you do not know how to handle them, you find them difficult. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. When we avoid difficult conversations, we trade short term discomfort for long term dysfunction. This is the most pertinent statement that I could find about difficult conversations. And the fact is, we keep navigating, negotiating, and facing difficult conversations day in and day out. Most of the times, we remain unprepared to handle these difficult conversations. Difficult conversations are more often than not based on facts. They are more about emotions, feelings, and differing perceptions. Let us focus on the key takeaways for our today's session. The first question we'll try to answer is, why do we miscommunicate? What are difficult communications or conversations that we face day in and day out at our workplaces? Why do we avoid difficult conversations? Handling difficult communications and a use case where we'll try to apply our understanding of difficult communications. Why do we miscommunicate? Let us have our first poll question to understand what are the most prominent reasons for miscommunication. I invite you to answer this poll question that will be flashed for you, talking about the various prominent reasons for miscommunication, and I request you to answer them. Right. Can we have the poll results on the screen, please? And we have the poll results. Are they visible? Right. So let us explore the reasons why we miscommunicate. Some of the reasons why we miscommunicate are based on the things that are very commonly practiced by us. We focus only on our own perception. We operate with assumptions. We sometimes have poor intentions, wherein we also fail to understand the other person. We have different expectations from communications, which also results in miscommunication. Sometimes lack of proper context also results in miscommunication. Sometimes cultural differences, language barriers, etc., are also commonly found reasons for miscommunications happening with us, around us. Now, some examples of difficult conversations that we face are in our workplaces, which is when we are giving feedback, when we are talking to our spouses, relationships, when we are talking about our colleagues, when we are uh, giving a salary appraisal or requesting for a salary appraisal, and so on and so forth. Now, here is also a poll question for you, which asks you what percent of people in the workplace avoid difficult conversations? Is the poll question on your screen? What percent of people in the workplace avoid difficult conversations? Right. So I hope you've answered it. You would believe me if I say, according to workplace resource firm Bravely, 70% people avoid difficult conversations in workplace, which is a very, very large number. The more we avoid difficult conversations, the more we let them sit and simmer rather than resolving them. So, the research shows that the top three hardest conversations we face in our lives are all work related. 33% of difficult conversations revolve around pay, whether we are asking for a pay rise or whether our seniors are telling us that we wouldn't have pay rise. 31% of difficult conversations circle around colleagues' inappropriate behavior. 31% when we've got to point out to our colleagues that this is something we wouldn't tolerate, when we have to draw boundaries. Feedback on poor performance is 30% of difficult conversation that we feed. For example, if, even when we have to give feedback to our students or convey to parents about poor performance of their wards, we find it difficult. It doesn't come easy because there is a very thin line between feedback and criticism. Thereby, we fear handling this conversation. So, the top 10 types of difficult conversations at workplace are expectation setting, when we are defining what we expect, whether it be from our students, whether our seniors are defining those expectations from us, setting priorities, setting our work goals. It is a difficult conversation because the expectations vary, perceptions vary. Delegation conversations are another set of difficult conversations when we are giving out work. When we receive work from our seniors, at times it becomes very difficult when we don't accept that work. Imagine when you are giving homework to the students and asking them to submit their homework. Homework submission dates are always points of discussion and tend to become difficult if the students do not agree to the dates, right? So delegation conversations are very difficult conversations. Feedbacks, once again, are difficult, as I've lined out that there's a very thin boundary between feedback and criticism, and sometimes they can result in very tense emotional scenarios when feedback is rejected. Salary negotiations, once again, are very difficult conversations when you are required to list out your merit, and the senior maybe goes about telling you that we would not be having a salary appraisal. And this becomes difficult once again because we feel very strongly about it. We are very emotional about it. Promotion requests and expectations are also difficult conversations. Workplace flexibility expectations, timelines, submissions, prioritizing tasks. These are very, very difficult conversations because, once again, they fall into the area of negotiation when we are trying to negotiate the leverages that we can get when the other party is dictating or maybe, outlining the timelines. So workplace flexibility expectations become very difficult because of workplace rules, which try to be one and the same for everyone. So these are very difficult conversations. Conflict resolution, as such, is a difficult conversation where maybe you've got to resolve a conflict with your colleague, you do not agree with certain rules, you do not agree with certain ideologies. So these become very difficult conversations because then the parties find it difficult to come to a consensus. Performance management reviews are also difficult conversations because they are taken as feedback on direct capabilities. Every leader would agree termination or redundancy conversations are the most difficult conversations because they are not taken in the right spirit, they are taken personally, so they become very difficult. And of course, offer of employment and counter offers, just in case they happen, are very difficult conversations wherein resignations, wherein job acceptances are uh, involving a lot of emotions. So, once again, difficult conversations are primarily not about getting the facts right, they are about conflicting perceptions, interpretations, and values. And the fear of facing the blame at times makes us counter blame or counter impose, which makes the conversation all the more difficult. Now, why do we avoid difficult conversations? Let's have another poll question which asks us, what is the biggest reason for relationship breakdown at workplaces? Please answer this poll question. All right. So, yes, the biggest reason for relationship breakdown at workplace is poor communication. But there are other factors that contribute to our avoidance of difficult conversations. Awkwardness and hesitation. Trust me, we always find it difficult to raise issues which are conflicting. We hesitate because we fear judgment. We fear how we will be perceived. And there is an awkwardness in raising the issue. We believe that it would be better if we brush it under the carpet. But trust me, it is never so. The issue remains there, it doesn't get resolved. But yes, awkwardness and hesitation is one of the reasons for avoiding difficult conversations. Apprehensions about how to approach it. Dear educators, it's a fact that even as we now have many, many modes of communication available to us, our communication skills are facing a severe challenge for the simple reason that we have started WhatsApping a lot many things rather than just picking up a phone and communicating directly. So we are losing the skill of clear and effective communication. And that is why all the more we carry apprehension about how to approach it, because we are not confident about our capabilities of approaching a subject that can potentially be conflicting. Lack of confidence in our ability to handle it. We do not know how the conversation will pan out and how we will be able to handle it. We fear escalating it further. And that is why we avoid difficult conversations. Fear of confrontation. As I said, we fear escalating it further. We uh, avoid difficult conversations because we do not want to damage the situation any further, or we do not want confrontation, because workplace situations are very delicate and any damage to the conversation can directly affect our uh, feedback, our performance. That is why we avoid difficult conversations with all the might that we can get. We worry about being disliked. No, no. We actually think that if we are not able to handle the difficult conversation and if it escalates or gets out of hand, we would face a backlash that we would find very difficult to handle. So we don't want to be disliked at our workplaces or anywhere else. We fear negative consequences. We are uncertain about the outcome because we are not sure how the other person will react to our broaching up a difficult conversation. So we are uncertain about our outcome, and our limbic brains kick in. It is our mechanism to avoid uncertainty, because as human beings we want to be certain about things. So that is why also we avoid difficult conversations. All right. Some strategies for handling difficult conversations. Those who are in direct mode, I ask you to note down at least 5 strategies that are coming to your mind at the uh, moment. Just in brief, note down what are the strategies you for yourself employ to avoid or handle, rather to handle difficult conversations. All right. So let us dive into the strategies for handling difficult conversations right away. The first and foremost strategy is to be certain whether the conversation is worth approaching, whether the problem is worth addressing. Sometimes it is better not to broach a conversation unnecessarily if time can resolve it, right? So this is the most important aspect of handling difficult conversation, to be able to judge whether the problem needs addressing or whether it will get resolved with time. Because sometimes if we address the problem when emotions are raw, we damage it all the more. So we should be certain whether the problem is worth addressing and how much time we should take before we address it, right? Plan out the conversation, keep the topic at hand. Now, what we do is sometimes we broach a difficult conversation without adequate preparation, without adequately thinking on as diverse areas the conversation can take shape into, so we are not able to handle it. More importantly, when we do not plan out the conversation, we digress from the topic. And the moment we digress at the topic, we actually make a difficult conversation all the more misguided and difficult. So always stick to the topic, plan out the conversation by thinking on divergent aspects of the conversation or divergent paths that the conversation can take, and how best you would bring it back to the topic. So plan out your conversation when you are broaching a difficult conversation. More often than not, we dive into a difficult conversation without processing our emotions. and without planning our conversation, which actually makes the conversation all the more difficult, and it escalates it. And then next time further, we start fearing broaching upon a difficult subject. So plan out the conversation well in your mind, journal it, note down the main points of conversation. And if you think you need to take those points up in writing with you when you are broaching the topic or subject, take them. But do not digress from the topic at hand. And do not let the other person also bring in points which are irrelevant. Be direct. Now, direct does not mean rude. Please be very clear. Direct does not mean being rude. So be direct. Approach the conversation directly rather than beating about the bush or being vague about it. Be direct that this is what happened. I am not feeling comfortable about it and I want to raise it up, right? So be direct because, as I said, perceptions vary. So if you're not direct, maybe the other person wouldn't be able to understand the gravity of what is being discussed, understand the context of what is being, and then your conversation will completely derail. So be direct, be very clear. Being direct does not mean being rude. Be specific, state concrete examples. On this note, I will tell you, as I said on point number 2, note down your stuff, note down your points, that these are the points I want to raise, and be specific. Do not use the words like never, always, sometimes. Don't be vague. Be specific. This is what happened. On this date, this happened. These were the words spoken by you. These were the words spoken by me. And these are the facts of the matter. So state concrete examples, drop your assumptions, and explore your intentions. See, before broaching a difficult conversation, it is always better to explore your intentions. Why I want to broach this conversation, why I'm looking at it the way I'm looking. Are my intentions in the right place? Are any of my biases operating here? Drop your assumptions. We actually are very good at assuming negatives. Maybe she had bad intentions. She wanted to hurt me. Right? Do not assume. Once we assume, our conversation takes a very gray and a dark color. So drop your assumptions and explore, introspect if you're carrying any assumptions that can potentially make the conversation all the more difficult and complicated. So drop your assumptions that this is what the other person meant, and so the conversation, keep your mind open. Watch your language. See, we've just had an example of somebody who didn't watch their language and they are now in a soup. So, yes, watch your language, watch your words. Be very, very careful about what you are speaking. Here, I want to stop you also and point out that if during the difficult conversation you feel that you are once again getting angry, your emotions are on a rise, stop. Once again, call for a timeout. But do not ever use poor language, because otherwise, then there is no redemption for the conversation. So, watch your language, watch the words coming out of your mouth. Allow the other person to speak. This directly connects with point number 5. We assume that we are the wrong party. We assume that we are the right ones, and we do not let the other person give their inputs, and we don't listen to the other person. So allow the other person to speak. And when the other person is speaking, please do not prepare a response at that time. Listen to understand. Once you listen to understand, you will realize that you are able to see the other person's perspective. And that's the touchstone for handling difficult conversation. Because as much as you want to be heard, the other person wants to be heard, right? Listen. The most important aspect of a successful conversation is listening. It's not speaking. So, dear teachers, listen. Yes, unfortunately, it's an occupational hazard with us that we speak more and listen less. But if you really want to handle a difficult conversation successfully, listen and listen to understand, not to respond. Ask relevant questions. When you ask relevant questions, you will gain a lot of clarity into the thought process of the other person. Then you will be able to see his or her perspective and you will be able to clear a lot of air. So ask relevant questions and listen to the answers. Manage your emotions. If emotions once again creep into the conversation and you are not able to manage them, call for a timeout. As it is very much said, when emotions walk through the door, thinking jumps out of the window. So if your emotions are walking in, then you've got to call for a timeout because your thinking will go for a toss and you will not be able to rationally handle the difficult conversation. Offer a solution, meet halfway. This is the key strategy for any successful negotiation, and a difficult conversation is also a negotiation into resolving it. So, meet halfway. Please keep in mind that neither you are 100% right nor the other person is 100% wrong. You've got to keep that window of understanding, that I'm open to listening and understanding to an alternate perspective and accepting it where I am wrong. So offer a solution, meet halfway. Even as you're planning out your conversation, think how I can bring a solution to the table. And of course, the solution has to keep the other person in mind as well, right? So meet halfway. And this is a cardinal rule, a bedrock of any conversation. Be empathetic, practice kindness and compassion. When you are practicing compassion, you will definitely make an effort to understand the other person's point of view. And any conversation is useless if it doesn't carry compassion, right? So when you start practicing empathy and compassion, your intentions would be in the right place, your heart will be in the right place, and you are likely to meet a lot of success while handling the difficult conversation. So be empathetic. Some more points to take care of are, as much as possible, stay at about the same level. Now, please understand, whenever we are handling difficult conversations, it's like a power play as well. Try to be on the same eye level so that neither you feel intimidated by the other person nor you are intimidating the other person, right? So both of you could be at the same eye level, which actually spells a lot of equality for both of you in the conversation. And of course, it also spells a lot of openness. Approach the conversation with openness and an interest in problem solving rather than needing to be right. As I had said, difficult conversations actually broach around the blame game. Because we fear being blamed, we take out all our ammunition to blame the other person. So difficult conversations are actually, a contest, a tussle on who is right. But once our intentions are in the right place and we intend to solve the problem rather than being right, because when there is a need to be right, trust me, the conversation is being approached with an ego perspective, right? So if you focus on problem solving, that yes, this is a conversation that needs to be held, this is a conversation that can bring about a resolution in this stalemate that has happened, you will be able to approach the conversation better. Avoid finger pointing, blaming, name calling, yelling, screaming, cursing, put downs. You know what? Once again, avoid emotional outbursts in handling difficult conversations. And this cannot be underscored enough that once you start feeling emotional, don't approach it. Call for a timeout. Approach a conversation only when you've been able to process your emotions and introspected upon them. Why I'm feeling so, why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, how can I express this in a language that would be rightly perceived or perceived in an intended manner by the person in front of us, right? So avoid finger pointing. As much as you wouldn't like to be blamed, so the other person wouldn't, right? So avoid finger pointing. Avoid the words always, never, everything, nothing, because these are vague words. As I talked, be specific, be direct, be clear. So these words almost never lead to anywhere. Be specific. 5 days back, 7 days back, thrice in the past 6 months, you've been rude to me, or you've spoken these words to me which I did not like. Be specific. Avoid this always, never, everything. These are vague words. Make sure you understand what the other person has said before you respond. This is an important aspect of listening and strong communication. And of course, it is also an important skill and emotional intelligence. When you try to understand what the other person has said, you are actually practicing emotional intelligence rather than just giving out a knee jerk reaction. Okay. Do not walk away or leave the conversation without the other person's agreement, because if you do this, you've completely broken the situation. Do not walk out. But of course, request for a timeout if you feel your emotions are on the rise. Okay, can we just take a break? I'm feeling very out of place. I'm not able to think straight. I would want to broach this conversation once I've gathered my emotions better, once I've collected my thoughts better, right? But just don't turn around and walk away smirking or making a face that I don't want to be a part of this conversation anymore because it's not going to my liking. So allow for a possibility of timeout by excusing yourself formally. If the conversation is escalating, even as you've planned, you've prepared, you've analyzed your biases and assumptions, call for a timeout. Because with all your right intentions, maybe the other person is not ready to broach the conversation in a manner that it should. Take the responsibility for feeling the way you do rather than blaming the other person. Use I messages. More often than not, we use the language as you said so, you told me so, you did this, instead of saying that, because we just cannot talk like that in a difficult conversation. For that matter, we just shouldn't talk like that. Talk about your emotions and feelings in I statements. When you said so, I felt this. I heard this in these words of yours. I felt this. I see it as this way. So, would you be explaining it to me what you intended? So, see, there's a big gap between what is said and what is understood. So, you always should be talking about what you felt. All right. So, now let us come to a use case. Before we broach upon this use case, let us have one more poll question. The question is, as an educator, what is the most difficult conversation you have to do with parents? Right? And the choices are: discuss child's academic struggles and performance, behavior issues, commenting on their unreasonable expectations, or parental complaints. Right? So I leave you for 30 seconds to think and answer this question. Right. Studies show that we educators find speaking or conversing with parents about their wards' poor performance or lack of performance is the most difficult conversation that we have with parents, right? And it can be very stressful. And most of you are doing it uh, specifically on PTMs, but at times you are required to, give an individual call to parents and ask them to come and meet you. Those are very stressful conversations and they should be planned completely. that this is what I'm going to say, this can be perceived in this manner, and then I'm going to handle it. Plan your conversations with parents. More often than not, otherwise, it becomes a tussle of egos where you want to say that you are right and parents are on a defensive, defending their words. So, plan out your conversation with parents. Now, let's see a use case. How do you deliver the message to parents that their ward is lacking the musical ability when they hold the opinion that he is a good singer and must be given the opportunity to lead the choir or school orchestra in the annual show? Right. Can I please have people posting on chats their opinions? How will you handle this conversation when the parent believes that their ward is a good singer, but you or your team has discovered or realized that the child needs to go a long way before being given the opportunity to lead the orchestra? Is it possible to have people speaking out their opinions? Is it possible? Yes, Atul, is it possible that we can hear some opinions directly?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So we got a response. So appreciate qualities and then come that music is not in the list. So we can ask parent to the classroom. Be polite and say is good but needs little practice. Lack of
Okay.
cooperation.
Oh my. Okay. Okay. Yes. Any more points?
Still,
Right. What I hear is definitely this conversation is going to escalate and it will become a tussle, right? The way to approach this conversation is, first of all, to observe the child and list down the specific areas of strength and specific areas of weakness. So, the first rule of approaching a difficult conversation is to be specific and be direct, right? So, you would plan out the conversation in the manner that I'm meeting you to discuss your words, musical abilities, and I appreciate that he is learning, and I appreciate that he is. I mean, you are wanting him to lead the school choir, which requires a lot of initiative. Okay. And then please give a concrete account of his strengths and the areas where improvement is required. You would not say these are the weaknesses. As another point asks you to watch your words, be very careful what ramifications each word would have. And of course, children, or for that matter, all of us are work in progress. So you would say that these are the strengths of your word and these are the areas requiring work. And of course, whatever time period is available up till the annual show or where the child has to lead, you will clearly inform that maybe it will not be possible for the child to cover up these areas where work needs to be done. And of course, promise specifically of avenues that would be given to the child, that you would be giving the child opportunity here, here, here in some lesser competitions or performances, maybe in the assembly, you will be giving twice so that the child gets an opportunity to showcase his talent, so that the child gets an opportunity to polish his skills. And of course, if the child is able to cover up, scale these areas of concern, the child would be given an opportunity. Assure the parents that you are not dismissing the child. Show the parents that you've done enough homework before sitting in front of them and speaking about their ward's musical abilities. Take the parents on your side. or rather tell the parents that you are on their side and you are championing their ward. You are not out there to cancel their ward or to dismiss their ward's ability, right? And see, conversations are games of perceptions, and words are understood by every individual as per their own assumptions, biases, and perceptions, right? So, when you show that you've been meticulous, when you show that you've done your homework, and when you show that your intentions are in the right place, you will be able to win them over. You will be able to make them see reason. Once again, there will be a lot of emotions at play. Parents would feel uh, emotionally about it. Their emotions will be involved because they've hooked up their mind that they want their word to lead, right? But at least you could not let those your own emotions steep in. More often than not, when parents are losing a grip on their emotions, we also start losing a grip on our emotions. And then the conversation completely fails or breaks down. So be very, very cautious and clear that you will not let your emotions like anger, irritation, frustration seep into the conversation. Maintain rationality, listen to them, because when the parents feel heard and understood, they will realize that you are on their side, right? And more often than not, our conversations with parents fail or face a blockade because the parents feel unheard, the parents feel not understood, and the parents feel dismissed. Trust me, they are an important stakeholder in their ward's education as much as you are, right? So do not let the parents walk over you, but you also do not bulldoze the parents. Both parties need to be heard. The parents should feel that their insights, their inputs about their ward are valued, weighed, and considered rather than being dismissed, right? Any conversation that you are having with the parents, check your emotions, do your homework, be specific, be direct but kind, compassionate, not rude. Okay? Mind your words, watch your tone, listen to the parents. They are not very difficult things to practice, but unfortunately, we find ourselves lacking when we need to practice them the most. This results in conversations becoming all the more difficult. Practice these skills, and difficult conversations will be a cakewalk for you. You will realize that the shark that you were fearing is actually a friendly dolphin. Thank you so much. So we can have questions, Atul.
Thank you, Shivani, for a very engaging and informative session for our community of teachers. I'm sure that our teachers have taken a lot of takeaways from this session. Let me check if there are any question from the audience. If you have registered and fill out the feedback form our section for this session, check your participation record in the app in the learning section. I will guide you through the instructions. Step 1, open the Sender app on your device. Step 2, navigate to the ongoing webinar section. Step 3, click on the submit feedback. Please note that this option will be available at 6 p.m. Indian Standard Time. During the end of the session, we will share a 4-digit code required for the feedback. Enter this code to access the feedback form. Complete the feedback form and you will be able to download your record of participation instantly. This new process was introduced to streamline your experience and ensure your participation is instantly recognized. An important announcement: next section onwards, the feedback form will be available only through the Senda app and will not be shared in the session. Download the Senda app today. Thank you so much to all participants for engaging with us today. To register for more such upcoming webinar, please visit the Senda app. Good night.